How many times have you heard that in order to be successful and reach your goals, you need to get better at prioritizing and focusing? And how many times have you tried to reduce your to-do list and clear your calendar, and then by some kind of magic force, it just fills up again and your to-do list ends up being like an endless stream of tasks that will never ever end? If this sounds familiar to you, you might be suffering from childhood trauma, and here's why. Being busy is a survival strategy. Mostly it's related to the big T trauma. It can also be related to smaller T traumas. Depending on how big the trauma is, the easier it will be for you to change that pattern. Bottom line is, it's a survival strategy, it's a pattern, and we can change it. So how is being busy linked to being a survival strategy? There are a few things you need to know about your brain in order to understand this. Your brain has one main priority. It is to keep you safe. And how does it keep you safe? Well, it is by ensuring that you have your place in your tribe, that you have a secure spot in your tribe, because your brain knows that if you lose your place in the tribe, if your tribe kicks you out, you won't survive for very long. Because this was the reality of our ancestors in Africa. They were living in tribes, and the reality was a reality with a lot of dangers. There was scarcity of food and water. There were hostile tribes. There were dangerous animals. Our ancestors lived in a dangerous world, and our brains got programmed during those times. So although our society isn't dangerous in the same way, our brain still thinks that we depend on our tribe. So the most important thing for our brain is to make sure that you are secured your spot in your tribe. As children, especially aged 0 to 7, our tribe is our parents. We need to know that we belong to our parents. And if for some reason the child's brain interprets the parents as not being able to take care of the child, not being there, not valuing the child, not loving the child, not having time for the child's brain will start to look at that as dangerous. Although there might not be anything to it, remember that your brain needs to keep you safe. And because of this, it has a negativity bias. It's like wearing those glasses where you're always scanning for danger. So since your brain is always scanning for danger, it will look for potential dangerous situations. So, for example, if a mother is super busy getting dinner ready and a child comes running, "Look, mom, I have this drawing. Isn't it nice?" And mom's like, yeah, not now. I don't have time. The child's brain will interpret this as, there's something more important than me. What I create, my thoughts, feelings, the stuff I make, is not valuable enough. That means that I am not good enough. We all have these small T traumas. It's impossible to avoid. I even grew up in a loving, caring home, and I still have them. And it's just because our brains function that way. And it's important that we know it. So we all at some point misinterpreted the world and ended up with beliefs like, I'm not good enough, what I have to say is invaluable, no one's interested in my thoughts, my feelings, whatever, my drawings, my creative work, who I am. It means I'm not valuable, I can't belong. All of those beliefs, which are wrong, they are just misinterpretations of the reality. So a child will always look for danger, and because the child's brain is looking for danger, and the beliefs that are very often stored in the child's mind is, I'm not good enough, I can't belong, I'm not valuable, I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, etc., etc. I think you know what I'm talking about. So although you get a lot of love and attention from your parents, this most probably happened at some point during your childhood, whether you met some other kids and you felt different than them, maybe an adult said something to you, or some kind of situation your brain interpreted it as you not being good enough. I'll get back to how the small t traumas affect us and make us believe that we have to be busy in order to be valuable. Big T traumas can be the really big, scary, dramatic events, and it can be growing up in a home where you were neglected. Maybe one parent was sick, maybe one parent was an alcoholic, or parents got divorced. All of these things will create an unsafe environment for the child. Remember that a child depends on their parents for safety, especially up to age 7. So if both parents are not there and can give the child a feeling of being safe, the mind will have to interpret the situation as dangerous. So if one parent is sick, or if there's a lot of fighting, alcohol, drug abuse, neglect, even busy parents not having time for their children. If this goes on for a long period of time, it is so scary, so unsafe for the brain, and the brain will learn that the world is dangerous. So if you're suffering from a lot of anxiety, if you never feel calm on the inside, if you have a lot of thoughts which are just racing through your head, you're ruminating, you have a lot of fear, etc., this is most probably rooted to your childhood being unsafe. And in the more extreme cases, which maybe aren't really that extreme anymore, because we live in a world where there's so much abuse, neglect, drug abuse, alcoholism, there's so much stuff going on, and a lot of kids are growing up in households where life isn't good. So think about this. If a child is in a home where life isn't good, maybe the parents are fighting, maybe a parent is yelling at the child, things will be so scary, they will be so uncomfortable, that the child will learn that life is dangerous, life is hard, life is stressful. And being in that insecurity, that unsafe environment, being in all of those negative emotions is super scary. It's super overloading for the system. And the brain always wants to bring you to safety. And what will the safest thing be for a child who is in a situation which is unsafe? Well, it is to avoid the situation. So I worked with this client, and normally I'm bound by confidentiality. But as we uncovered these old patterns, he said, you know what? I really want you to share this with the world, because everyone needs to know this. So he had a pattern of being super busy. He was just adding task after task after task. He was an entrepreneur, CEO of his company. He was having sort of great success, although he found that he was always tired, always behind, always stressed, and had his focus spread out on too many tasks. He couldn't really prioritize because he always ended up putting more stuff on his to-do list, more stuff into his calendar. He didn't have time for his health, he didn't have time for his family, and he really didn't enjoy life. And as we started working together, I did a process where we go back in time, and then we look for the root cause of this pattern of always being busy, of always filling up the to-do list, filling up the calendar, and being so busy that he didn't even get enough sleep. So we went back, and what came up? He grew up with one alcoholic parent who left him when he was 5, and the other parent was mentally ill, and there was never a kind word coming out of the mouth of that parent. So he learned that his life was miserable. It was horrible. It was unsafe. And as he turned 12, 13 years old, he understood that there was a way out. It was removing himself from the scene. It was being busy doing other stuff. In the beginning, it was going out of the house and coming up with other things to do. And this became a pattern that was just reinforced and reinforced for every year he was alive. So being busy was his way of staying away from his life, because he learned that his life was unsafe. Needless to say, he was living now, today, in a beautiful home with a beautiful family, fantastic business. Everything was great in a way, although he was still struggling with stress, not prioritizing his health, being too busy. And really, after you pass 50, you can't keep that going on for a long time. At some point, there's a need to slow down, start prioritizing, not only for your health, but also for your business. Because how can you have success in your business when you're trying to do 10 things at the same time? How can you have success in your business if you have 40 tabs open in your head at the same time, when you can't sleep because there's so much stuff going through your head, when you're busy all the time? So it's not about wellness and health and happiness and relationships and all those things. It's also about the business, because in order to have success in business, you need to prioritize. You can't do 10 things at the same time. So being able to focus and prioritize is one of the most important things for success. So as we uncover that pattern, we also reprogrammed it so that it no longer affects him. Your subconscious mind has to store all negative events, especially the big T trauma and also the small t trauma. So it stores it in order for you to resolve it at some kind of point. You know, all the old emotional stress, big T trauma, small t trauma, all that stuff, it does create inner stress. It creates inflammation. It's not safe, it's not good for your health, and it really removes you from the life you're trying to lead. So your subconscious mind always wants you to resolve this stuff, and it will keep presenting it to you through triggers and feelings and things happening to you in order for you to resolve the issue. And one way of resolving it and getting rid of all the old emotional clutter is by learning. So when your subconscious mind really understands and can see everything, can zoom out and see the picture and understand that it was never about you, see the situation for what it was. And this is the work I do with my clients. When your subconscious mind can do that, it will also allow you to release the emotional load which is connected to that event, so that after that you can think about it without getting that emotional load. It will just be a memory. So this is the work I do with my clients, and especially the high performers who really, if you spend most of your energy ruminating on all that old stuff, all that energy which is being spent trying to push down all the old negative emotions, it really hinders your performance, and it's a big showstopper in terms of focus, motivation, productivity, feelings of love and well-being and health and relationships and all that good stuff I really want you to enjoy in your life. So with this client, we reprogrammed that old belief. He understood everything so clearly. He understood that he was still 40 years after keeping himself busy in order to stay away from his life, although his life was perfect. So this shows the power of all the old patterns that are stored in your subconscious mind. And those patterns are normally from the first 7 years of your life. Sometimes things happen later in life as well. Although when there are things happening later in life, they're normally just triggering some event that happened when we were kids. Very often when I work with my clients, although they think the reason why they have a fear of flying or a fear of public speaking, etc., they link it back to something that happened when they were 20 or 16. Normally, that's not the first time the mind learned to be afraid. Normally, it goes way, way, way back. So this shows how big T trauma, how growing up in a household that was unsafe, where you were neglected, where you didn't get love, where you didn't get whatever a child needs in order to be safe, can lead you to being overly busy in adulthood. And no matter how much you're trying to restrain yourself, you'll end up filling up your calendar, filling up the to-do list, because that's the way your brain keeps you safe. At least it thinks it keeps you safe. It will lead to stress, which is not safe. We know that. But the brain doesn't understand that. The brain is just doing what it has learned is the best strategy in dealing with your life, getting away from it. And small T trauma can also lead to you being overly busy. So at some point, your mind might have interpreted the world as you not being good enough because all the other kids had something you didn't have. Or maybe someone looked at you and your mind went, ooh, that means I'm not good enough or I'm in danger. There's so many situations in our life that we can misinterpret. Maybe you had a friend when you grew up who was really insecure and was holding you down. So there are a lot of different things that can happen in a person's life that can lead to the small t traumas. And those can lead to a person feeling like they're not enough, like they're not good enough. The thing that often comes up with my clients is they go back to the very first year of their life. Imagine you're a small little baby, a few weeks old or 6 months old, whatever. You're in bed, you're crying, and no one's coming. How would your mind interpret that? Well, first of all, no one's coming to help me, right? That means I must take care of myself because no one else is going to do it. That means I'm probably not good enough or valuable enough, because if I were, someone would come and pick me up. And I've seen this so many times with my clients. A lot of them have low self-esteem. They are afraid of public speaking. They're afraid of applying for that new job. They're afraid of taking chances, afraid of what people are thinking about them. They suffer from imposter syndrome. And when I start working with them, we go back to that very first year. And it happens so often. And when we reprogram that first experience, crying in bed, no one is coming, everything else shifts. It's like the mind learns to see the world in a new way, with a new lens, meaning that situations will be interpreted in a more objective way. Okay, so you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with being busy? So again, think about this. If you at some point learned that you weren't good enough, although your parents were there for you and love you and all that stuff, your mind will think that you're in danger. If you're not good enough, if you're not valuable enough, it will think that you're in danger. And maybe you even got a lot of praise when you came home with good grades, or you performed within some kind of sport you were doing, or even as a child, maybe you jumped down from the fence and your parents went, whoa, you're so good at this and you're so talented, etc. So you got a lot of attention when you did something. If that is true for you, which it is for a lot of my clients, the brain will interpret this in this way. When I perform, when I'm perfect, when I'm a good girl, I'll be valuable. That means I'll be safe. Remember, your brain is afraid of you being kicked out of your tribe. So it thinks if you're valuable, well, at least that will secure your spot in the tribe. Are you with me? Are you getting a grip on this? Does it sound logical? Does it feel right? Okay, good. So your brain will try to keep you safe by making you more valuable. And if you learned as a child that number one, you weren't good enough, and number two, well, when you did produce and perform and do all that stuff, when you were a good girl and took care of others and etc., then you would get praise, then you would be valuable. Well, your brain will bring that pattern into adulthood and will keep you busy, will keep you producing, because that will make you valuable, will make sure that you're pleasing other people and putting your own needs in the back and pleasing everyone else, because that means you'll be valuable, right? Cancel, 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 because it's not true. It's just an old pattern. It is just a survival mechanism. So if this sounds familiar to you, I recommend you going inside, listening inside, and seeing what is behind my patterns. Why do I feel like I have to say yes to everyone? What I feel like I have to fill up my calendar? What is that driving force? So don't try to force yourself away from it, because remember, your brain thinks you're going to die. And what is keeping you alive is being busy. So we need to understand the pattern and start to reprogram that before we can let go of it. So the most important thing is awareness. The number one step is always awareness, understanding where it comes from. Did someone say something? Did you experience something when you were a child? Is it really true that you're not valuable if you're not pleasing other people, if you're not being productive, if you're not being a good girl? Is it really true? Not at all. Remember that you are valuable, you are unique, and you are fantastic, and we can reprogram all those old patterns. If you want to understand more of the patterns that are driving you, I'm pretty sure that you will like this one.